Did you all think I wasn't going to do an episode today? In all seriousness, all jokes aside, initially I had thought that I would need more time because of the research for tomorrow's episode, but it turns out I had a few hours to spare, and so I'm doing this now. Project Mirror, using possessed entropies to invert burning hybrid flesh, and then in brackets, Council of Five. Now, before we get into it, I just want to say very quickly, because we're literally going to dive right into it, that I will be getting to all of your shoutouts in the next couple of days, I promise you, and at the same time, we do have a Patreon. It is what keeps the show going. There are a lot of things we discuss on there and we talk about, and also a lot of different things that we communicate and interact with about as a community that we can't really do here publicly, and some of that will be evident here. Now, what does burning stand for? Now, the ing part doesn't matter, but burn does, and you'll see the documents that reference this. But burn stands for biologically uncertain recurring Nagarians or Nagas, which means basically reptilians or reptoids, but not necessarily the Naga part, but you'll see what I mean. So what's happening here within deep underground military bases around the world, not so much in the United States, but around the world for different political and legal justifications and ramificatory reasons, has to do with the fact that they are taking human skin within a certain frequential vibrational state, all right, similar to that of the extraction of certain elements within the UFO reverse engineering community in the military-industrial complex, and they're merging it with alien skin to create a hybrid that may have a more likely chance of obtaining a consciousness. Now, you might be saying, Dave, where do we start and all that? So let's start very basically at what entropy means, and we got a lot to cover here. So please, if you can, do your best to try to keep up. I know that I talk quickly sometimes, but anyways. Entropy is a scientific concept as well as a measurable physical property that is most commonly associated with a state of disorder, randomness, or uncertainty, according to Wikipedia. The term and the concept are used in diverse fields, from classical thermodynamics, where it was first recognized, to the microscopic description of nature in statistical physics, and to the principles of information theory, end quote. Now, there are four major components of entropies. It has far-ranging applications in chemistry, physics, biological systems, and their relation to life. And the reason why I say this, to be honest with you guys, is because we have to understand that just because life is not carbon-based or silicone-based or what have you, doesn't mean that it does not exist. And what I mean by that is this. Take a look here at afterlife-knowledge.com. Focus 10, Focus 12, Focus 15, and Focus 21. We're going to stay focused on, or no pun intended, we're going to stay focused on Focus 10, which has to do with the mind awake/body asleep. And I quote, "This is the level at which the physical body is asleep, but the mind is awake and alert. Consciousness is fully retained without dependence upon signals from the physical body. Conceptual tools are developed that the participant may use to reduce anxiety and tension for healing, remote viewing, and for establishing resonance with other individuals. In Focus 10, much like the dream state, we learn to think in images rather than in words." End quote. Now, you might be saying, Dave, why do you bring this up? I bring this up because, again, this is thanks to Genius. There is a declassified CIA document that kind of got slipped under the rug, so to speak, having to do with Nikola Tesla, and you're going to see very shortly how this all connects back. But let's take a look here. This is a CIA report. According to Tesla, this teleforce was based on entirely new principle of physics that no one has ever dreamed about. According to Tesla, it would be enough to defend the United States against all possible aerial attacks. Tesla stated that this energy beam would melt any engine and would also ignite explosives aboard any bomber. Tesla stated that no possible defense against it could be devised, and he asserted that the beam would be all penetrating. Now again, we can make a quick connection here before I go on, having to do with the members only episode where the Palladians described to Mr. Meyer that it's not like in the movies where the force fields, as they get stronger, it actually turns out that the more you hit them, the more powerful they get. It's not that they weaken, right? Now let's continue on. Tesla stated to Mr. Lawrence that he would make one important stipulation before he would divulge this secret to the United States government, blah, blah, blah. Now here, what we're going to notice is very interesting. Tesla said Mr. Storm consists of a radio-type machine known as the Tesla set, which was invented by Mr. Tesla in 1938 for interplanetary communication. Mr. and Mrs. Storm claim that Tesla's engineers did not complete the Tesla set until after Tesla's death in 1943. all right? Mr. and Mrs. Storm claim that this set was placed in operation in 1950, and since that time, Tesla engineers have been in close touch with spaceships, end quote. Now, there is a big proposal that Tesla was from Venus, but that's not even the point here. What we're looking at here within Project MetaMirror is that we're finding that through programmable matter, as well as through harnessing the ether energy all around us, merging extraterrestrial skin, biological skin, all right? And you'll see which races I'm talking about shortly. I'm not trying to be overly vague here, but merging the skin with that of human skin on the wall. And if you are not, familiar with the wall, we did an episode on that, I believe 2 or 3 weeks ago. But what they do is they take the skin of the human, they take the skin of the alien, all right? And then they slam it onto this wall and they merge it to try to create a more biologically natural creature that could then have a consciousness in it. Now, you might be saying, Dave, you speak about consciousness a lot and what have you, but we need to understand why. And I agree 100%. So let's take a look here. Top 10 underground alien bases. This is according to tallwhitealiens.com. Now, I'm putting the link in the description and the pictures up too of different bases all over the world. You know, we're looking at Canada, bases in Russia, bases in America, you name it, right? Another entrance in, California, different things like this, Mexico, all that kind of stuff. And the reason why I bring this up is because the worldwide bases are where the more radical experiments occur, because if anything ever leaks, it can't be tied back to the US. It's almost impossible. Now, you might be saying, Dave, why do you mention Focus 10 in the beginning? Because that CIA document disclosing what a lot of what Tesla was doing had to do with the fact that it stated, and I quote, "We cannot allow Focus 10 energy as curated and discovered by Tesla to be disclosed to the public," end quote. Why? Why? Maybe because, I don't know, there's certain energies that we ourselves can harness. You see what I'm saying here? Right? And when we look at that, we have no other choice but to say, what on a public level, from a psychological warfare aspect standpoint, is there a case of this type of, programmable matter and merging of human and alien skin actually conglomerating or coalitioning, into that of something on a public front? Well, I'm glad you asked about it. So let's take a look here. It's something called Crispr. Crispr, according to Wikipedia, which is an acronym for Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats, is a family of DNA sequences found in the genomes of prokaryotic organisms such as bacteria and archaea. These sequences are derived from DNA fragments of bacteriophages that had previously infected the prokaryote, end quote. Now, long story short, there is a company called Crispr Therapeutics, okay? And let's take a look at who funds this. First off, I do want to mention that DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, I believe that's what it stands for, invested in CRISPR. Whenever a government institution or acronym-based institution representing certain parts of the military-industrial complex more than any other part of the government invests in you, man, you better sell your company quick. I'll tell you right now. But let's take a look on the outside who was funding them as well, too. Here's what we're going to find. Let's see. CRISPR Therapeutics is funded by 12 investors. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Wellington Capital Management are the most recent investors. Do you know who one of the first ones were as well too? Mark Zuckerberg. Now, here's what's interesting. If you take a look at the number of funding rounds, there have been 5 so far. But if you take a look at some of the transcripts at board executive meetings, there is reference to the 5 Eyes. Now, what are the 5 Eyes? Let's take a look. According to Wikipedia, the 5 Eyes is an intelligence alliance comprising Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom and the United States. These countries are parties to the multilateral UK-USA agreement, a treaty for joint cooperation in signals intelligence, end quote. Now, let's be honest here. That's very fancy terms for we're spying on you, and part of my English, you can't do jack shit about it. That's basically what it is. Snowden helped leak some of this as well too. Obama initially denied that this was even a thing until all of a sudden, Snowden leaked it, and then Obama later said, well, we were going to tell everyone, you just had to let us get to it, and this and that, and then they never ended up getting to it. Of course, typical, political bureaucracy. But 5 Eyes has a cover for many different reasons. First off, the main cover is to surveil the deep underground military bases within New Zealand, Australia, the United Kingdom, and you name it, right? On top of that, with China and Russia as well, but that's more of an adversarial thing. Now, here's the other thing I want to mention as well, too. The 5 Eyes, what does that remind you guys of? That is a psyop in what they put in the James Bond movies. Now, the only difference here, guys, is they changed the first word. All right, so instead of 5 Eyes, it's 9 Eyes in the James Bond films with Daniel Craig, all right, with Dame Judi Dench. The reason, and I'm not trying to, shit on the James Bond films. What I'm saying, though, is that this is how they slip it in. This is how your subconscious remembers something. 5, 9 kind of rhymes, right? They throw it in the back of your head, and because the numbers are slightly different, but not different enough for your subconscious to differentiate it, you then think, when you read Five Eyes, you go, I don't think they're spying on us that much. I doubt it. You know what I mean? And now, the other thing that's mentioned as well, too, is that within the transcripts of the board meetings between Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, and many other executives that have invested in Crispr, as well as some mysterious representatives from DARPA, which may in fact be the caretaker, might I add. They reference the Focus 10 energy. They also reference the Council of Five. Now, here's the other thing. The Council of Five could be the Five Eyes, but it could also be something else as well, too. And let's take a look at what that might be, because that is extremely interesting here. So, let's take a look. Alien races. Now, please, and I quote, this is according to starseedportal.com. Now, let's take a look here. ET races with self-serving destructive purposes and things like this, right? Now, the ones that are self-serving with destructive purposes are the Nigerians. But on top of that, what I'm doing here is I'm going to be putting up pictures of all the different races there are. However, here's what's interesting. The website starts off with the Council of Five, which are the Orella, the Egorot, the Emerthers, the Jinvos, and the Redans. And these are the different species of extraterrestrials that make up the Council of Five. Again, this is why we see different types of greys so often, and we see other Nordic or Venusian extraterrestrials, right? And take a look at some of them. The Emerther is actually the Skinny Bob video, first off, right? And we take a look at Egorot, that looks very similar to the Ebens. The Orella looks similar to that of a praying mantis, right? And then we look at the Redans, which again, pretty much look like us. Let's be honest with ourselves here, right? And so what we're seeing here, guys, is we're seeing that this is a cover for multiple different things. Now, the experimentation and what have you could be that in which is occurring within China and the slaughtering of the Muslim Uyghurs. And I know you might be saying, Dave, you sound like a broken record, this, and that. But guys, I just need you to bear with me here. What we're seeing here is a global infiltration of these reptilians, of these Nagas, if you want to call it, or of these Nigerians that are trying to influence the human political realm, that are also trying to influence the deep underground military bases, which is why there have been so many quote-unquote earthquakes recently, all right, in New Zealand and many other parts of the world. 40 to 50,000 earthquakes in the last 3 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. You see what I'm saying here? And so when we look at all of this, it's kind of like, okay, how many times could natural disasters be used for that of a cover-up? How many times could this work? We're looking at the trail of money right here. I'm not even joking. We're witnessing it for ourselves. Now, let's take a look here as well at bibliothecaplades.net, according to Veil of Reality website. It has to do with transhumanism. And this is what, all right, the possessed entropies are trying to literally burn in terms of a new modernized form of flesh. Now, take a look, and I quote, "Transhumanism is a school of thought that seeks to guide us towards a post-human condition. Effectively, this is integrating technological and pharmaceutical hybridization to damage human DNA as preparation for body snatching." All right, and this was on a mainstream media site about 15 years ago. The fundamental basis of the transhumanism concept is the AI downloaded into the scientific human mind from the negative aliens and satanic forces in their quest to survive and achieve immortality by hijacking human consciousness and ultimately possessing the human host body. Does that not sound like the possessed entropies? Does that not sound like the burn victims, so to speak? Again, burn meaning biologically uncertain recurring Nigerians. Now, we can say Nagas, but I don't want to confuse that with the other, ancient spiritual infiltration. But we could say that these reptilians or these shapeshifters with self-serving and negative purposes may in fact use the Naga, or may in fact be a representation of what ancient human cultures were referring to as the Naga, believe it or not. Now, I want to reference this article here too that I found to be extremely interesting. Again, we can talk about the disc theory, we could talk about drop feeding, but I think those of you that watch this show often don't need to hear it again. So let's take a look. According to phys.org, an extremely mainstream media website, by the way, and this is all for preparation of the Council of Five through that of Crispr, which then comes full circle on Focus 10 and has to do with the energy of what Nikola Tesla was referring to in the document, and I will finish off with that as well too. But let's take a look here. Quirky response to magnetism presents quantum physics mystery. And I quote, "The search is on to discover new states of matter and possibly new ways of encoding, manipulating, and transporting information." All right. One goal is to harness materials as quantum properties for communications that go beyond what's possible with conventional electronics. Topological insulators, materials that act mostly as insulators but carry electric current across their surface, provide some tantalizing possibilities. Now, here's the thing, end quote, before we go on, what we're going to find is that there are unexplained anomalistic occurrences that when certain frequencies are emitted above a surface, these actual forms of matter can manifest themselves into that of a physical, I guess we could say, state, which we can then touch. Even though this is at the most molecular level, what does that remind us of? Ether Energy, Project Carrot, the Wall episode. That reminds us of a bunch of different things. Now, what Tesla was talking about before he died in the document that I read at the beginning for you guys had to do with Tesla saying, if the United States were to ever be attacked, we can put an energy shield around the US, right? And the reason why this was classified is because it is actually much more easier to put an energy shield around you than the United States would, the government and the military-industrial complex would like to have us think, right? Which is why they put all these different things in front of us. Oh, CRISPR, by the way, it's got to be this big thing with big funding, and we don't know where the money goes, right? And you might be saying, okay, Dave, how do you know it? Like, how can you even say that, right? Well, let's take a look here. CRISPRTX.com, CRISPR Therapeutics. CRISPR Therapeutics raises $25 million in Series A financing and announces founding team of world-renowned academics and clinicians. All right, and let's take a look here. And this is from 2014, by the way. Now, there are some companies mentioned in this article that have deep connections with DARPA, which also have deep connections to the Focus 10 transcripts and the Council of Five, which seem to be the 5 main alien races humans are working with. But I don't want to say the companies' names because I don't want to get sued, basically, or defame them. So I just want to say that for the record. But they have deep investment ties to that of black money in politics. And black money in politics, for those who are unfamiliar, has to do with money that cannot be disclosed as to who the funder is until that fiscal financial quarter has ended. So every 3 months, you just keep cycling through different dummy companies, and then you keep donating to CRISPR over and over and over again. And who are these people? We have no idea. Again, this is a legal form of bribery. They're literally putting it right in front of our faces, and we have no other way of knowing. And I'm not even joking. It's literally the way in which Nikola Tesla describes having to do with this money investing into energy beams that are similar to that of the UFO on Patreon, for those that know what I'm talking about, that disassemble, literally, anti-ballistic missiles mid-air, which is technically speaking impossible for human technology to use as well. And again, we're looking at all of this, and we see here, for example, look, news.berkeley.edu, Defense Department pours $65 million into making CRISPR safer. What part of it are they making safe? As long as this program is up and running, nothing's safe, guys. There's nothing safe here. And this is all being, because then the next thing becomes, I'm not even joking, the next thing becomes, where's this experimentation occurring? You ever see CRISPR headquarters? That really doesn't look like a place that's doing the kind of stuff that they talk about in these articles here. You see what I'm saying? Oh no, but CRISPR's contracted out to, various investor independent institutions around the world, and that's the most detailed they get. That's not even detailed, that's vague. That's really vague. You want to know why? Because they're merging the skin of different extraterrestrials that have been given to them from the Council of Five and humans in the deep underground military bases, not in the US, but around the world, as the website that I showed you earlier. And they're jamming it together to try to create a more naturally synthetic ability in that of curating a soul into a clone or some type of body of sorts. And humans are only one addition to this Council of Five. We're not anything special by any stretch of the imagination. Now, again, we also have to play devil's advocate as well too, because the final thing I want to mention is that there's one part of the document that references human ET flesh, but they reference it as anomalistically terrestrial. Hold on a second. Anomalistically terrestrial. Those two words contradict each other. Anomalistically means that it can't be explained. Terrestrial means it's coming from here on Earth. So if it's coming from here on Earth, then you're technically explaining what that anomaly is. You see how they throw these massive words in front of us, and they want us to think, oh, big words, big money, leave it up to the big, the elites, or leave it up to the guys with money. They know what they're doing. Don't worry. Guys, we just broke it down in a 20-minute episode what they're doing. Let's be real here, right? So I want all of you to let me know what you think, and we'll catch you all tomorrow. We got a big day. Thank you. Cheers.